My ectopic pregnancy horror story. I want to preface this all by saying I've always been pro-choice. This experience has cemented that belief and given me a new perspective. I've heard about ectopic pregnancies but wasn't prepared for what happened to me yesterday. This is a long story. December 7th at 9:30 p.m. I stood up after peeing and immediately felt a sensation run up my right abdomen and around my lower back. The pain was so severe I couldn't fully inhale without starting to cry. My first thought was that I somehow pulled my back. I duck-walked to my bedroom and screamed for my husband. He helped me into bed and set up a heating pad across my abdomen. I stayed in bed for 2 more hours before the pain and chills had me sobbing. My husband helped me out of bed to drive me to the ER, and I was screaming. The pain was so intense I nearly blacked out. I was certain I had appendicitis. We got to the ER at midnight on December 8th. My husband rolled me in on a wheelchair and I was openly sobbing from the pain. The nurses rolled me to the back where they did a urinalysis and a blood draw before moving me into the back waiting room. I got the test results back on my phone, and that's when we discovered I was pregnant. At this stage, I still thought I had appendicitis. My husband and I were excited, but confused about the pregnancy. About half an hour later, a nurse came by and offered me oxycodone. I refused because I wasn't sure if it was appropriate to take an opiate while pregnant. I asked her for Toradol instead. She gave me a strange look and then came back with 2 Advil. My husband said he saw her move my chart from fast track to main patients. About 10 minutes later, the nurse rolled me back into the main waiting room. I asked her if I would be seen soon and told her my pain was unbearable. She said, "There are a lot of sick people in front of you and we're short-staffed. We'll see you when we can." It was 2 a.m. at this point. I was writhing in pain in my husband's arms. I couldn't breathe properly and would get pain attacks that made me black out. At 5 a.m., they called me back for an ultrasound. The ultrasound was over at 6 a.m. At this point, I told my husband he could go home and take our dogs to his mom's house so she could watch them. I was called to the back again for another blood test around 6:30 p.m. While I was back there, I overheard 2 male nurses talking about me, not realizing I was back there. One said, "She's been asking for a bed for hours." The other responded, "This is an emergency room. If her appendix does rupture, at least she's already here." I wish I had said something, but I was so exhausted from the pain and sleeplessness I just sat there crying. I was rolled back to the waiting room and sat there by myself until 10 a.m. crying into my hands. Finally, they called me back. No wheelchair. I was forced to walk at least 300 feet to the emergency room bed and then had to get into the bed by myself. I was screaming into a blanket by the time I was in bed. I had spent 10 hours in the ER waiting room in near blinding pain. I finally got to see a doctor. The doctor told me the ultrasound showed a possible ectopic pregnancy in my right fallopian tube and hemorrhaging in my abdomen. He prescribed me IV Tylenol and told me an OB would come to see me once she was done delivering a baby. My husband still hadn't come back. I found out later he took a nap, which is fine. He really needed it. When around 11 a.m. a care team member came to get all my registration paperwork. She put my bed into an upright position and had me fill out the paperwork. She left without readjusting my bed. My husband arrived around 11:30 a.m. By then I was crying again. The pressure from sitting up was causing the pain in my abdomen to crest. He went outside to call a nurse and ask where my IV Tylenol was. She said, "Oh, your regular nurse is next door helping an actually sick patient. He'll be here soon." 30 minutes later, and still no nurse. By this time I was heaving into a bucket from the pain. My husband left again to find a nurse, and the same actually sick patient nurse came back. My husband told her I was suffering from an ectopic pregnancy and needed the medicine. She came back with a 2-pack of Tylenol. I told her again between sobs my doctor prescribed an IV drip. At this point, I didn't even have an IV in my arm. She inserted one while waiting for the IV drip approval. Then she moved my bed back down into a laying position, and the pain near instantly dropped from a 9/10 to a 5. She hooked me up to the IV Tylenol and I was down to a 3, and felt the first real relief I'd felt since 9:30 p.m. the day before. The OB came to see me around 3 p.m. and I was scheduled for surgery at 6 p.m. By the end of surgery, I learned I had a ruptured fallopian tube and about 1 liter of blood sloshing freely in my abdomen. 1 fucking liter. I'm not sure when my fallopian tube ruptured. It needed to be removed, and I can't stop asking myself if the nurses had taken my pain seriously, if I would still have it. This all happened so recently, and the post-surgery pain is still so severe. My husband and I want children so badly, but this experience is one of the most traumatizing things I've ever been through. The only person in this whole story who was awesome was the OB, and my husband, of course. She actually took my pain seriously and signed me up for the first operation spot available. She had incredible bedside manner and consoled me, letting me know she knew how scared I was, and that she would take care of me. Everyone else can go fuck themselves. This happened in Los Angeles, California.